Before we get into your expedition that's to come, let's just talk a little bit about what Saray Khumalo has been able to achieve today. You know her pretty well.
Yeah.
What was your first reaction hearing the news that she finally did it after 4 attempts?
Well, obviously we've been following it quite closely for the last couple of weeks, and I remember she got hold of me. We had a chat middle March, and she said she's got last-minute opportunity to go. She's found some sponsorship, and she's off to Everest again for the 4th time. And the biggest challenge on any of these kind of mountains, beyond the climbing, the altitude, the cold, and the conditions, is the mental challenge. And when you failed at something 3 times, her first 2 attempts were thwarted by earthquakes and avalanches, but the last one she turned back just beyond the South Summit, which is within spitting distance of the summit.
Now, for those watching who probably have just gone over a hill like I have, you say, oh, you came within 100 meters. That's not that far. There are so many variables when you're summiting a peak like Everest that 100 meters actually might as well be 100 miles away.
Well, yeah, and when we talk about meters on high mountains, we're not talking about horizontal distance. We're talking about vertical meters. So when you get to South Summit, which is just around 300 vertical from the summit, it's still 2 to 4 hours climbing from there in high winds, in treacherous conditions. You're battling to breathe. It's freezing cold. You've got to monitor your oxygen supply all the time. And when you put all of that into perspective, it's around understanding that it's about the journey and not so much about getting to the peak. Summits kill people. If you get summit fever and you don't understand the fact that, Alex mentioned this morning, getting to the summit is halfway. You're still got to get all the way back down. And when you've tried 3 times and you've invested a lot of time, a lot of money and energy to get there again and to then be able to still make that rational decision of, do I pull the attempt or do I keep pushing? That's ultimately what gets people coming home alive.
And I suppose, it's mental, it's spiritual, it's all of those things. Like you said, the first 2 times were thwarted, I believe, one by an earthquake,
yes,
and another by a landslide. And then there are health issues and the environment and all of that and the weather at the time. At what point do you say, actually, maybe the universe doesn't need me to do this right now?
I think it's got more to do with maturity and one's outlook on life than it does with anything else. It's about understanding that despite all the effort and hardship that I've put in, will the mountain be here next year? Of course it will be. Whether I will be there next year is a completely different story. And so, it's about you mentioned the spiritual journey. It's about that idea of, I might come back to the same place, but I come back as a different person. And that for me is the irony about summits, is that you spend on Everest 40 to 60 days getting to the summit, and then you turn around and you go back exactly the same way that you came down. And there's almost no sense of progress. While you're acclimatizing, you're climbing up, you sleep, you're coming back down, you're sleeping now. You do that, repetitively over 40 days. And that's what makes it mentally so challenging.
Goodness. So you said she got in touch with you a little while ago. If she had received the sponsorship to be able to attempt this 4th climb of Everest, she would have been keeping fit in the lead up to that, because there's no way she would have just found out a couple of months ago that she's going and then gotten fit overnight. Is this something that people like you and her, you're always constantly trying to be climbing fit?
Well, not so much climbing fit as much as it is a lifestyle. So, while we have plans for expeditions, normally, 2 to 3 years in advance, in this kind of space, it just becomes a lifestyle. So, we run a lot. I ride my mountain bike a lot. Sarah is incredibly strong. She runs quite a lot. We do a lot of weekend 20-kilometer training hikes around Johannesburg and so on. And, she really is so strong.
Now, speaking about strong, the two of you have decided to attempt a much larger expedition next year. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so 7.2 degrees is around trying to break the world record for something known as the Adventurers Grand Slam. And that involves reaching North and South Pole, the last degree to each of those poles, as well as all 7 summits. In under 139 days, which is the current world record.
I want to go and lie down just thinking about that. How do you even begin to approach something like that?
It's a project I've been working on for over 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And the frustrating thing, as is like, Sarah's 4th attempt on Everest and eventually getting to the summit, all the preparation work is done. The last obstacle now is securing the sponsorship to be able to do that. But how do you tackle 7 mountains and 2 poles? Oddly enough, all of them are in cold, inhospitable places. I don't know why.
Because then everybody would do it, Erik.
Well, every now and then I'd like to do something in a warmer climate.
Yes.
But it's just around, again, going back to understanding that process, finding purpose in the process, finding those small milestones and ticking them off one after the other.
So where will you start?
So we will start January next year with South Pole, the last degree, so 117 kilometers trek from 89 to 90 degrees. From there we will go to Mount Vinson in Antarctica, there to Aconcagua, Carsten's Pyramid, Kilimanjaro in Africa. We then take a quick break from mountains to do North Pole because it melts and you get hunted by polar bears.
Right.
We will then return back to mountains with Elbrus in Europe, Denali in North America and Alaska, and then we're going to finish probably the same week next year with Everest, because this is the week, almost exactly to the date for the last 3 years, that the jet stream has turned the season's work around making Everest summit accessible.
So you and Sarah are doing that? Do you have other people on your team?
We are the core team. We are opening some of those peaks to members of the public to join us. So if someone wants to come and climb Kilimanjaro or Aconcagua or Vinson with us, or Elbrus, those opportunities are available. But the core team for the world record attempt would be myself and Sarah.
And if people wanted to find out more very quickly, because I have to go, where can they find out more?
Facebook page, 7.2 degrees.
Fantastic.
I just want to add
easy.
quickly,
Yeah.
A lot of people have contacted me already saying, with Sarah getting Everest now, does she still make some records next year when we do 7.2? If we complete 7.2, she'll hold the record for the Grand Slam as a South African and African woman, but she'll also be the first black woman to summit Everest from both north and south sides, because we'll be doing Everest from north side next year.
What a thing. Other
That's
people,
amazing.
I suppose it's about everybody has their own mountain to climb. For some, it's walking around the block, and it's for others, it's doing the 7 summits and going to both poles. Erik Vermeulen, thank you so much for joining us, and all the best, and please do keep us up to speed on your expedition next year.
Thank you very much.